The question is that grievances be noted. I call the member for Herbert.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and I will try not to sound like a broken record. I'd like to raise two issues tonight and try and string two stories together in a coherent narrative. The first one is about the tender process. There can be no real argument that infrastructure equals economic growth. That's the good part. But there is no growth unless we share, unless it's shared locally. We would find it hard to swallow if there was a major highway built from an overseas contractor brought in all their stuff overseas. So why do we allow our tender process to give jobs in regional centres to people from outside of town? Can I just give you two examples of this? First of all was Flinders Shire Council. They had a stretch of road Flinders Shire Council had that was that they estimated would cost $9 million to fix, to repave. Now, because it was over the level that it had to go to a national tender, they had to put it out to tender. Now, a contractor won it fair and square. But the cost was $27 million. They flew in their workers, they put them up in a camp that they trucked in, they brought in their equipment and they built the road. Now, so that you've got a nice stretch of road, but you've got absolutely no local benefit from it. The second example I'll give you of this is the Joint Logistics Hub at Laverack Barracks. It's $120 million at Townsville that's being spent. Now, the tender was won fair and square across all the things that they had to do. They won the job. But they are a Brisbane-based firm with a little office in Townsville. Their principal subcontractor is also a Brisbane-based firm. So you have the situation where $120 million is being spent in my city of Townsville with very little local benefit. No subcontractors, very few subcontractors, very few apprentices, very few local benefits. So, to my mind, Deputy Speaker, it is pointless to build infrastructure if there is no community benefit by way of jobs or supplies. It does not help a community if the only local beneficiary to these sorts of jobs is the pie van. And that's what we have to watch out for here. And that's something I'll put in this Parliament on notice, and my party on notice, and my Queensland colleagues on notice that I will be working to fix. Which leads me to a project that I believe that my government needs to back. The de Havilland Caribou aircraft was the quick takeoff, quick landing aircraft and support. It was a propeller-driven thing. Looked like a diesel truck, like an old diesel truck just skirting around the skies of Townsville. It was a great bit of gear. But it was retired a few years ago. Now, when it was mooted that it was going to be retired, John Howard said that their replacement, the C-27J, would be based in Townsville. Now, it's my understanding that RAF now would prefer that that goes to Amberley. So, how do we then link these two stories together? It is about how we ensure the local economy prospers, and that's the trick here. If the federal government gives the go-ahead for the C-27Js to be based in Townsville, we can organise for private investment to build the buildings, to do everything around that, and from there you've got that spine that is created by the federal investment, which will allow small business to grow. If it goes to RAF base at Amberley, which is all defence based, it's in the middle of nowhere outside Ipswich, and you'll sit there and you'll be able to do these things. The Defence will build it, Defence will charge Defence rent, and it will just be a great big money churn inside government with no real benefit to anybody other than the people that want to make sure that it's built there. So what we should be doing is trying to stop the money churn. If we have private contractors, private funding, private investment going into building the infrastructure that will house this sort of thing, and from there the existing aviation hub in Townsville will be able to grow with small business and medium business playing off that space. There are lots of things happening in Townsville, and something in relation to the development of Northern Australia. You'll note that the planes that fly from Townsville to Cairns to Papua New Guinea are all turboprops, and I think those are the sorts of things that we must be trying to play into that space. That's the sort of thing that trip out to Mount Isa is exactly the same. So, private assistance. Private investment would assist us in stretching the defence dollar further. Now, we have made the commitment to try and redress the chronic lack of funding in defence that went on under the previous government. But we must also be very canny with the money, because we are talking about a lot of money here. So any option we can have which will stretch that dollar must be considered. And it doesn't get down to the stage where Defence has to own the building. And it shouldn't have to own the building. If it's incredibly secret and all that sort of thing, then yes, maybe we should look at that sort of stuff. But if it's just a hangar for the aircraft, if it's just the workshop for the aircraft, where private contractors or tender winners will make sure that that work is carried out there, then I don't see why Defence has to own that building. So federal government infrastructure then would be the catalyst for small and medium business to further establish Townsville's aviation hub. Now, we've got a business in Townsville called Flying Colours. They were based in Brisbane, but they decided to make the move to Townsville because we have space at the Townsville Airport. We have an owner, which is Townsville Airports Limited, which is a subsidiary of Queensland Airports Limited, which owns the Gold Coast, Townsville and Mount Isa airports. They have built the hangars for them. They are now doing Virgin's entire fleet, which is they go from the red to the white. That's all being done in Townsville. And they're doing that sort of work there because we have a proactive business owner who's looking to provide private investment to make sure that we're utilising our facility. Our airport is not landlocked. Our airport has lots of land, and we can build this sort of work there. We have BAE systems in our city that we are working to build our further aviation hub. If we are to be a power in the redevelopment or the development of Northern Australia, we must make sure that aviation is a key to it. Pardon me. The government does not need to create wealth. The government never needs to create wealth, and I think everyone in this place knows that government does not create wealth. But it does provide the impetus, it does provide the seed capital, it does provide the hand up for small business who does create wealth. The small business is the one that takes the risk. The small business is the one that takes the punt and says, I can make this work. They're the guys that will work the 80 hours a week and rely on their investment in their hard work to make sure it pays off down the track. They're the guys that create the wealth. They're the guys that create the business opportunities and the job opportunities for the people in the town, so that they can then love living in Townsville and then build their own homes. Those are the sorts of things that we can do. If government does not create wealth, so private enterprise can prosper. If you do it the other way around, then we just end up in where we are. If you do it the other way around, where government is the only one building, where government is the only one providing the infrastructure, and government is the only one doing the business, then you end up with nothing. All you end up with the taxpayer owning more and more, and we don't get anywhere. So both of these stories have that coherent theme where we've got to drive our dollar further. We've got to look for where the local economy can prosper, and where we can make sure that what we do in our city and our region, and their supplies throughout Australia, is we've got to look to where the tender process and the use of government funds becomes more and more central to what goes on in our neighbourhoods, in our cities and in our regions. If we can drive that through, it means that our local engineers, it means that our local quarrymen, it means that our local truck drivers can all apply to make sure that they have people working in their businesses, and they can continue to employ. We can get apprentices to go through, and that's what leads to a city that grows and grows and grows. I live in the best part of Australia. I know there's a few people in here. That will take exception to it, you are not allowed to mislead the Parliament. So when I say that I live in the best part of Australia, then you know it's coming. You know it's the truth. So Townsville is the hub of the universe, where everyone goes through Townsville at some stage of their life. We are an important city, but we must make sure that your tax dollar, that the taxpayer's dollar, is respected every time. So I'm not saying we should be doing. I'm not saying that the tender process should be changed so that we go to the most expensive tender. What I'm saying is that we've got to do our tender process. We've got to look at the way we spend our money differently. We've got to look at the way the whole thing is structured differently. And if we can do that, then we end up with a great result. And I think if we can do that, we end up with a better result for all Australians. I thank the House.
The question